A picture of this tank came out recently. It appears to be a picture of a Russian T-62M tank, modified with a lot of components from the T-90M, the most modern Russian tank in active service. And it spread like wildfire. Everyone started talking about it. Pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, it doesn't matter. Twitter, Telegram, all kinds of platforms. Even media articles started to be written about it. Everyone started talking about this new T-62 tank, how it is a new modernization for this old tank. But it is fake. Yes, this tank is fake. There is no T-62 modernization that brings the tank to the T-90M standard. This image is photoshopped. To an untrained eye, this might seem like a well-made Photoshop. But to anyone that knows how Russian tanks look like, the more you look, the worse it gets. Let's start with the least obvious things that point to this being fake, and then we will go to the more obvious ones. The explosive reactive armor, relic, is mounted asymmetrically on the turret. The right side has the meeting point of the top and the bottom ERA blocks pointing slightly upwards, with the construction following a pretty straight line. The left side is pointed more downwards and the meeting point sits under the one on the right, with ERA also being more chaotic and having ERA blocks mounted in weird angles, with the entire construction ending up looking a bit crooked. Okay, you might say they just didn't do a good job, sure, but let's keep going. Next piece of evidence are the headlights. T-62M has one headlight on the right side of the hull, for a good reason, while this tank has two headlights, one on each side. This would not be possible. The reason why T-62 has only one, while T-90 and T-72 have two, is because the driver sits on the far left of the hull, with his periscope looking from that position. Mounting a headlight would prevent him from looking down onto the ground in front of him, which is something you definitely don't want to happen. And we can see that the periscopes of the T-62 are there, so this kind of placement would definitely obstruct the view of the driver. The right mudguard also appears to be protruding way too much out of the tank. This is how this kind of mudguard is supposed to look like on Russian tanks. This does not look normal. It probably wouldn't be able to be properly attached to the tank if it was placed like this. Then we get to the muzzle reference sensor, or a laser rangefinder. You see, T-62M has a laser rangefinder mounted above the gun, which would appear to be this thing on this tank, but they don't look the same. Laser rangefinder of T-62M has a big hole in the middle, with armored doors that open and close. This doesn't. This tank wouldn't even need one, considering that Sosna U or PNMT sight mounted on here already has an integrated laser rangefinder. But could this be the muzzle reference sensor that T-90M has? The thing that ensures the barrel of the gun is properly aligned? Well, while it certainly resembles it more, it's way too big. On top of that, it is mirrored. The muzzle reference sensor should have this small hole on the opposite side. What I believe happened here is that someone found the T-90M picture, had to mirror it to match the placement of the gun, and then enlarged the sensor to either make it look like the rangefinder or to cover the existing laser rangefinder of the T-62M. Either way, it is obvious Photoshop. Next is probably the most damning piece of evidence. If we look at the turret of T-62M, we will see the infrared searchlight of the commander, which in T-62M sits behind the gunner. We can also see this searchlight on this tank. What most people haven't noticed is that we can actually see it entirely. That is because the Sosna or the PNMT sight is transparent. You can see through it. Take a closer look. The outline of the infrared searchlight can be clearly seen through the sight. Not only that, placement of this sight would completely obscure the vision of the commander, which would have his sight blocked. That is one of the reasons we have never seen T-62s modernized with anything better than the small, uncooled thermal sights, because big sights like these would completely block off the commander. It wouldn't be a big problem if a proper panoramic thermal sight for the commander would be added, but that would be too much money, and is definitely not the case here. And for the last, we have this. What on earth is going on here? It looks like someone cut the remote weapon station of T-90M and removed the commander's sight and left this Abomination on the tank. This does not look normal for either T-90M nor the T-62M. This makes no sense. This seems like someone wanted to Photoshop a T-62M into a T-90M tank and failed. It's possible that this guy received a T-62M tank and then sent image to his friend or family member to Photoshop it into a T-90M so he could brag around, and it backfired, but I'm just purely guessing. Would be funny if that actually happened. Sadly, we don't have a non-photoshopped image of this T-62. The Photoshop is somewhat decent, but it's clear that the person who made it isn't well versed into tanks. The lighting is good and colors do match quite a bit, but yeah, a lot of things that don't make any sense, including a transparent main gun sight. Who knows, maybe it's some new Russian tech. Anyway, that would be all for now. If you like my content, you can support me on Patreon. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a nice day.